Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In the year 2021, I made myself the goal to fill a sketchbook every month, and I completed that goal. And I learned a lot while doing it, and I thought to myself, you know what, Steven? You could make a YouTube video explaining what you learned to all these lovely folks on the internet. And that's what I'm doing today. So, I'm distilling what I learned filling these 12 sketchbooks into 3 points that are: number 1, drawing every day is good. Number 2, thinking while you're drawing is better. And number 3, sketchbooking in and of itself is essential to the artist. So come along with me as we take a look through my past 12 sketchbooks and take a journey through what I learned. Let's get to it. To start off, let's talk about drawing every day. This is a good thing, and I'm sure you've heard about it in many YouTube videos before. We're told time and time again to just draw, and honestly, it's fantastic advice. But often, we struggle with getting ourselves up to draw, or finding a reason to just pick up a pencil and draw something. This project was great for me as it gave me a literal reason to get up and draw every day, because I had to fill these sketchbooks. Granted, I was the one giving myself this reason, and for some people, it's pretty difficult to stick to their goals. However, it's so rewarding when you have finished a sketchbook and are holding it. For me, at the end of every month, it was just so satisfying to flip through and think back on the past 31 days and what I learned while drawing. And for this section, when I'm talking about what I learned, I mean what I learned technically. I was drawing for a year in these sketchbooks. I filled 384 pages, and I would sure hope that I did improve. And I did. And I can see this in a few different areas. Specifically in my spatial awareness. These sketchbooks were small. They were moleskins, and I'll list them in the link in the description, but they could fit very comfortably in my pocket. It didn't give me a whole lot of space to work with on these sheets, and yet I wanted to try new things, so I had to learn how to work in the confines of these tiny sketchbooks. Eventually, I became really comfortable in creating 2-page spreads, and this allowed me to try a lot of different subject matter and bigger scenes. The goal of these sketchbooks was to learn, and I wanted to use every square inch of the paper to do that. This leads me to intentionality in subject matter. This is something that I wish I had been more attentive to throughout the year, as I wavered a lot between being intentional and looking at reference photos and trying to master new skills, and also just goofing around and drawing in my comfort zone. Don't get me wrong, there is room to goof around. That's definitely needed in a sketchbook. But it's really easy to fill a sketchbook full of pretty faces and beautiful landscapes. However, if you can already draw pretty faces and beautiful landscapes, maybe you should try to draw a really crispy robot design based off a pencil sharpener or a skull. There's plenty of time to draw in your comfort zone, so why not spend some time outside of it and learn something new? Subject matter is not the only area where you can be intentional in. If you want to learn a new medium, if you want to master one that you're already working on, sketchbooks are a great place to do that. They're a very forgiving area where you can just splat paint on the paper, you can mess around, goof off, have fun, and learn while doing it. I use these sketchbooks to try acrylic painting, which I hadn't done in a long time, and I really enjoyed. I made some improvements in that area. I also did a lot of watercoloring, because I have this portable watercolor set that is amazing. It has 4 colors and allows you to get the whole spectrum, except for a really crispy purple and a really bright red, which makes me a little sad. But I learned how to use this watercolor set to do pretty much everything that I wanted, which was something I couldn't do at the beginning of the year. And that's why I did this challenge. It was to improve on the skills that I had and to learn new ones. So if you're thinking, hey, maybe I should start a sketchbook, maybe you should. You know, pick one up, doesn't have to be expensive, just a cheap one, and say, you know what, I'm gonna just do a little doodle in this every day. If you don't improve, you can come sue me. So now that we've established that drawing every day is a good thing, how do we think while we draw? And I'm not talking about intentionality in subject matter or medium. We already covered that in the first section. I'm more talking about thinking about how your drawing will affect others. Are you telling a story? Are you processing something? Are you just drawing something that has happened to you that day that was exciting or fun? In these sketchbooks, I spent a lot of time thinking of things to draw because I was filling a lot of pages in not a lot of time. So you'll find that as you flip through these sketchbooks, you can see a lot of the movies I was watching at the time, the music I was listening to. You can see the places I was. I did a lot of travel sketching. That was something I'd never done before. But being placed in the boxing ring of a blank page constantly will push you to places that you didn't know you even wanted to go, things that you even wanted to draw. Looking back through these sketchbooks, it's like looking at a journal, a visual journal of my past year. It's so cool to just be able to be transported back to a situation or a day or a feeling when I look at one of these pages, because I was like, oh my goodness, I was having a rough day, so I drew something. Or I just experienced something really cool, so I put it down on the paper. And because I was in these places, or I watched this thing, or I'm emotionally involved in some way in what I'm drawing, it makes it more interesting for the viewer, as I'm telling more than what I'm putting down on the paper. I'm trying to tell what's behind what's on the paper, which is a story. Behind every drawing should be a story. Storytelling is our goal as artists. So you can use this sketchbook as a processing pad to not only tell the stories that you want to tell, but also put your emotions and the things that you're consuming at the time, whether that be your surroundings or the media you're watching, onto paper. And in doing this, sketchbooks become a great teacher in killing art block. When you have to fill a sketchbook, or when you just want to draw but you don't know what to draw, and you just have that feeling of like, I'm not creating anything, and it's really frustrating, just go into your sketchbook, just pour out the things that you're thinking about. Just like draw the first things that are coming to your mind. Just like get them all out of your system, and a lot of them will probably be really terrible, and you'll want to hide them in a drawer and never look at them again. But at least you started drawing, and then you'll find that drawing comes easier again, and you're back in the zone, and art block is like a thing of the past, you know? And it'll come in cycles, and you'll go through the motions of an artist, you know? Some days you're feeling it, some days you're not. But at the end of the day, if you are intentionally thinking about drawing and putting the time in and venting artistically into your sketchbook, art block will become less and less of a scary thing and more of an artistic reset where you just kind of find your words again, find what you like to draw, unload what you're going through, and then you can move on to the next story that you want to tell. So the last two lessons were essentially points to this lesson. This is the big one. This is the big kahuna. This is what I really want you to take away from this video. So if you made it this far, you know what? Thank you. Give yourself a little pat on the back. Consider it from me. I appreciate the support. But why is sketchbooking so important? Why do most successful artists keep sketchbooks? Here, I'm going to tell you why I think this is. I am not a professional. I am still learning. I have lots of room to grow. But what I learned in keeping a sketchbook for an entire year is that they are an indispensable part of the artist toolkit. And I'm going to tell you why. So, number one, the creative bank account turnaround in a sketchbook is incredibly beneficial. You have no buildup. You have no unused funds in your creative bank account. This is a concept that I'm actually taking from Jake Parker, a great artist who I really like his work, and I really like his YouTube videos, so if you want to check him out over here. But essentially, the creative bank account is what you're consuming through your senses. These are the things that are filling your creative bank account, mostly visually. When you're watching movies, when you're on a walk, when you're with friends, when you're seeing things that interest you and that are like, wow, I could draw that. This is filling your creative bank account. And let's say you don't have a sketchbook. These ideas are only going to manifest themselves in your finished works. And maybe you see a cool car and you're like, hey, I want to draw that. You put that in one of your finished pieces. Maybe that wasn't the time for it, but you wanted to get it out of your system and you put it in that piece. But if you have a sketchbook, you can constantly be having this creative turnover where you put these things that you see into your sketchbook, and if you really like them after you've put them down, then you can put it in a finished piece. But just being able to pour what you're seeing onto the paper allows you to keep filling your creative bank account. When you put it out, you can take it back in and you keep on being an active member of your environment and gleaning from it what you can use in your work. Number two, as I mentioned in the last point, it's a visual journal. Sketchbooks, they might not always look great, but they are great to go back on, as they are a time capsule of where you once were. That is an indispensable part of sketchbooks that I absolutely love. Next, it's a project springboard. This is a big point that I want to hammer home. If you don't have a sketchbook, if you're not using a sketchbook, and you're like, wow, I want to start on a bigger project, you have nowhere to plan. Or if you do have somewhere to plan, it's on scrap pieces of paper that you might lose, and you definitely won't be able to look back on in 20 years unless you're really organized. But when you have a sketchbook, you can do all of your planning in this nice little bound book that you can go back to when you need to, and it's just a spot where you can work out all the kinks of your plan before you head into production. I used it for merch, I used it for school projects, I used it for commissions, I used it for animation projects, I used it for my animation portfolio. It was so helpful to me. It was a safe space that I could figure things out, I could mess up, I could improve, and then when I head into the final product, it was so much smoother because I had planned before. And I've tried to do things without planning beforehand, and it fails hard. It always seems stiff, it seems not thought out, and that's because it's not. And with a sketchbook, you can think things out safely. It's indispensable, highly recommend. It also really helps you build a style. Keeping a sketchbook and drawing regularly, you find ways that you are comfortable drawing, and this allows you to get a distinct style. People are always wondering, how do I find my art style? Well, I would say it's filling that creative bank account with not only things you see in the natural world, but also artists that you like, and then discharging that creative information onto a paper regularly, and eventually your brain will make sort of pathways that you like to run down, and that becomes your art style. It's just what's easiest for you, it's what you think looks good, it's what you can pump out fast, and then there you have a style. I think my style got much more defined over this year as I found the shorthand ways that I like to draw faces, I like to draw hands, I like to draw bodies, and this is just a byproduct of drawing in a sketchbook. And I don't know what number I'm at. The final point is that sketchbooks are amazing to have. I have a drawer full of sketchbooks, and every once in a while I look through it and I say to myself, wow, Steven, you've come a long way. But also, that was so fun. Like, you had so much fun drawing there, and you're gonna keep having fun, and you're gonna look back at the sketchbook you're working in now and say, wow, you have come a long way. But you took that sketchbook and you filled it. And I, in 20 years, will look at the sketchbooks I'm working on now and remember this summer where I made this YouTube video and I filled this page in this sketchbook. And that's just incredibly valuable to me. And so that is why I think a sketchbook is indispensable to the artist. It's an essential part of your toolkit, and I would highly recommend beginning to fill one today. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. 365 days worth of sketchbooks distilled into 3 points, which are drawing every day is good, thinking while you're drawing is better, and sketchbooking in and of itself is essential to the artist and his or her growth. And so I want to personally thank you very much for staying to the end of this video. It was a little longer, a little more in depth than most of my other videos, but I really appreciate it. There are some videos on the screen right here that you may be interested in, including a link to my sketchbook playlist, which includes sketchbook tours for all 12 of these monthly sketchbooks. Please check them out. Let me know what you think. I really appreciate the support.